Welcome to Heart with Keisha B, the podcast that focuses on the journey of grief, healing, and overcoming unforeseen circumstances. Whether you're dealing with loss or life challenges, this is a podcast that you don't want to miss. I am your host, Keisha B. So take a deep breath, open your mind and your soul, and sit back as we embark on this journey together. If this is your first time listening to the podcast, welcome. If you are a returning guest, as always, thank you for your continued support. As you know, this is a podcast that focuses on grief, healing, and overcoming unforeseen circumstances. So like always, there are going to be topics that we may discuss that may be a little bit uncomfortable. But what I always say is that in order to get to a place of comfort, in order to get to a place of change, we must discuss uncomfortable conversations. And so today we're going to talk about reclaiming self, overcoming generational trauma, and ending peace. And our guest today is Pamela. Hello, Pamela. How are you today?
I am amazing. How are you?
I am well, Pamela. I mean, there's no other better way to be today, right?
Amen.
Because again, as I stated, we are here to make a change in somebody's life. And as I heard your story, Pamela, I know that what you have to share for our audience today will be nothing more than a life changer.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, first of all, I want to celebrate not only you, but everyone that is on this call. This is not champagne. This is an energy drink. However, I think it's important that we always celebrate ourselves. And so whatever I drink, I always drink it in a champagne glass.
All right. I like it. I may have to adapt that, right? I always say that each time I have a guest on there, they always add a gem to my life. So I may have to add that gem to my life. As we know, sometimes we just need a self-starter, right? Whether it's a affirmation, whether it's just encountering someone that's positive in your life. And what I hear you say is that your affirmation and your energy booster is your drink in that champagne glass.
Yeah, a champagne glass. I mean, like it says behind me, it says celebrate you. We need to make sure that we're celebrating ourselves every single day, because that's one thing we don't get from other people. We don't get people celebrating us unless we're going out and striving to get it. But we don't have to strive to be celebrated. We can do it ourselves. That's exactly how I do it.
Exactly. Because sometimes we're not going to always be around other people. So it's gaining that self-confidence that you can just look in the mirror and just tell yourself something positive that will leave you feeling positive throughout the rest of the day.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. You deserve it and you're worth it.
Exactly. So Pamela, again, I want to thank you for being here. And as you heard me say, right, this is a podcast that, a lot of times we need someone to uplift us. Right. We need times that we have to know that we're not alone in our struggle. We're not alone in our stories. But sometimes those stories and those struggles can make us feel like that there's no one else who understands. Yeah,
absolutely. Absolutely. And I know that I was that way for a while. And when you grow up and experiencing childhood trauma, a lot of times you do feel like you're alone and no one really understands. And we definitely aren't looking for a pity party. We're just for anybody to come with us along with our misery. But we want to make sure that we are surrounding ourselves with the people who can lift us up, who can validate us, who can affirm us. Because when we grow up with that type of background, we don't get affirmed. We don't get approved. We don't even get acknowledged a lot of the times unless it's a negative acknowledgement. So we got to make sure we seek it out. And I like what you said earlier, Keisha. You said the hard things. You got to be willing to do that. If you're not willing to do the hard things, then most chances are you're going to stay right where you are. You're going to be miserable and you're going to blame other people for where you are when we got to take ownership for where we are. Yeah, we experience those things, but you know what? We got to realize that the reasons we experience those things or a catalyst or a piece of the puzzle that we need in order to be who we were created to be, So that's the way I look at why. One of my models of my clients as a coach, as a boundaries coach, is I tell people, I said, I'm not here to wallow in your misery with you. I'm here to escort you out of it. So let's get out of the party. Let's get out of the pity party. Let's get out of the victim mentality, because there's victimhood and we got to make sure we're not staying in victimhood and woe is me because of what we experience and blaming people for where we are, because those people did not make us to be who we are right now. We got authority to be and permission to be who we want to be. And we can't let that hold us back. I know I can't. I won't.
You're right. You're exactly right, Pam. When you were talking earlier about, we all have had some stuff. And a lot of times our stuff was self-imposed upon us by other folk, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
when I help people, often I talk about this file cabinet. And I talk about not just this file cabinet, but this file cabinet being us as individuals, right? And what I say is, when we look at a file cabinet, what do we often think of, right? We often think of all the stuff that we throw in all these drawers. Some things belong to us, some things don't, because sometimes we don't want folks to know our mess, right? Or sometimes we will say, I'm going to get to that drawer eventually, I'm going to clean it out. But let's be real. What drawer do we often clean out when we're cleaning out a drawer? A lot of times it's our top drawer.
Yeah, the top drawer. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the top drawer because it's easy. It's easy, it's accessible, right? But getting down to that bottom drawer sometimes is the hardest thing, because we don't want to hurt our back, we don't want to hurt our knees, and we don't want to feel the pain that has been induced within us for so many years. But again, in order to make some change, we have to get down to that bottom drawer and really work on that stuff. And so I know that today what you're going to talk about is to give people an insight on how to dig down that bottom drawer and pull out some of that stuff. Even if it's something that they didn't put in that bottom drawer, I know that your story today and what you do on a day-to-day basis will help people understand how to clean out that bottom drawer. And so now that leads me into asking you, Pam, who was Pam as a young girl?
Pam was vibrant, bubbly, but she was also a half. Here's what I mean about half. I have a twin, or I had a twin. I grew up with a twin. We were fraternal twins, so we weren't exactly looking alike, but we were twins. I was 3 minutes older than her. And we were very different because us being twins, because my mother dressed us alike. You remember the little strollers? They had twin strollers. We'd be in twin strollers dressed alike, and we just, oh, they're so cute. They're so cute. But I wanted to be different. I didn't want to be seen as one of the two. I wanted to be seen as independent, my own person. So I started doing things to kind of step out of that. And then there are labels that are placed on us. You're so sneaky, you're so this. And that was so I could step away from the norm. And one of the things about me, I love chasing after boys. I just love chasing after boys, whether they wanted me to or not. I was chasing after them. And, in hindsight, I think it was because I grew up without my dad. I didn't have a male figure in my life. And I just was curious about boys. So I was always chasing them. Now, coming from a dysfunctional background, my mom was very abusive, not only physical, but and mentally abusive. I grew up with two sisters, and both of my sisters have passed away now. But we all experienced the same trauma growing up. Well, I can't even go into that right now, but I knew I had to step away from that. And I just felt like the way that I grew up was the way that everybody grew up. And I come to find out different. Another thing about growing up is I grew up being bullied a lot. And I grew up in the area where there was, there was racism or prejudice within the Black community. And so dark skin versus light skin. And I also attended 13 different schools by the time I graduated high school. So I was always picked up and taken somewhere else. But the only thing about that is I had to come in with something that was already in progress. If you've ever saw a show where you missed the beginning and you're coming in and it says, this show is in progress, you're trying to pick up, okay, where's everybody at? What's everybody doing? What am I supposed to be doing? And that's what happened to me growing up, going to 13 different schools. I always had to start over and try to figure out the dynamics of where I was. Well, with that, I was always bullied. And then I come to realize after a while that I allowed people to beat me up for whatever reason, whether it's because of my skin tone or just because I was new, or because I also unfortunately picked up on the first guy that was really cute at different schools. And I'm like, yeah, I'll be your girlfriend. Not already in progress,
Right.
And there were girls that were already after these guys. And here I come in and I get the guy. And so that I had a lot of situations where I was bullied. I realized that the reason I allowed myself to be bullied was because I was bullied at home and I never could fight back. And so it was my understanding that when someone hits me, I can't fight back. So therefore I was bullied and I allow it to happen.
Yeah. So it got to a point to where it was conditional.
Yeah. no more. But that's the way that it was.
And unfortunately, there's probably so many kids even today that are going through that, but just don't know even what to label it other than this is their norm, right? But everyone else around them can see that their behaviors are not normal, but nobody may be able to really put the dots to the why.
Exactly. It's not until you become older and you start to assess these things. And, it's interesting because whereas mine was to acquiesce, to give in, there's some people that become bullies because of the bullying that they're getting at home. It's them lashing out and their anger manifesting and putting it off on other people. So that's why childhood trauma is so interesting, because you have to do the work. You have to go down deep in that bottom drawer, that bottom file drawer, Keisha, because if you don't, you won't be able to identify why you're doing the things you do and why you're getting the results that you're getting every single day.
Right. And as we know, the saying goes, hurt people hurt people. And that's not just a saying, it is the reality for so many people.
It's such a reality. We do it all the time, even today. Hurt people hurt people. I'm in situations right now where my daughter is hurting me tremendously, but it's because I hurt her. And so it hurts, but I understand. And that's the healing that she has to go through, no matter how many times I ask for forgiveness, because of the way that I was raised. That, it's the other thing, Keisha, is that you carry things with you unconsciously because that's the circle you were in. And if that's the way you were brought up, that's how you do it, how you raise children, then unfortunately you do it and don't realize the damage that you're creating as a result with your children.
Mom, let me say kudos to you. Kudos to you that on this platform with strangers, including myself, you're able to say, my daughter is this way because of things that I may have done as a parent. And I think it takes a very strong parent to be able to recognize, number one, that we're not perfect, right? Because we know we're not perfect as people, right? But we don't get a book, right? We don't get no book to tell us how to raise our children. We do the best that we can do. But here's a caveat to that. A lot of the best that we can do is based upon how we were raised or not raised. Right. And so kudos to you, Mom. And I hope that just what you said today will help another parent and their child recognize that no parent is perfect. No child is perfect, but we do have a duty. Sometimes our duty is hindered based upon the lack of knowledge of what we need to do. So again, kudos to you to be able to recognize, again, the why. Right. And I'm sure that was nothing that was easy to come to the realization of.
Oh, no, it's not easy, but the only way you can do it is to get in that bottom file cabinet drawer and do the work. That's it. Otherwise, you continue to stay right where you are and wonder why you're not getting the results that you really need or that you desire. You got to work towards it. You got to do the work. I think it's interesting. People will tell you do the work, but they don't show you what that work looks like. But you first have to know what it is that you don't want anymore. And then figure out, okay, what's the core of that? That's that bottom file cabinet drawer. You got to look at that. And what was that? And then really do the work. And, I've got some great examples of the work that has to be done. But I mean, if you want to, you got to first decide that something's got to give. And usually that something's got to give is you. You're the one that's got to give. You got to give of yourself to dig deep down into who you were as that little girl and realize that little girl is still in there. Yeah. And if you don't address the pain that she went through, then she's always going to be the one tugging on your dress, tugging on your sleeve, saying, I need help. I need help. And if you don't give me the help, I'm going to act out because it's all I know, because I don't have the intellect to know what to do, but you do as that adult. So it's your responsibility as the adult to help that little girl to heal, to get to the place where the two of you become one and you can work together to move towards the direction that you want to move in and to set the boundaries that you need to set. Even if those boundaries are with you, A lot of times the boundaries we set as adults are with the little girl inside of us. But the only way someone really honors your boundaries is if they trust you and they love you. And if you haven't built a relationship with that little girl inside of you to let her know that you're there for her so that she can build that trust and that love for you, then you're probably not going to get the results that you want. So you got to do that work.
I always say that was a heart to heart. That was powerful, right? Because you're doing inner work. And if you don't do the inner work, like you said, it don't matter what you show on the outside. It's about loving yourself. And the only way you can love yourself is love yourself through the flaws and correct some of the flaws that are presenting itself in your communication or your relationships with other people.
Mm-hmm.
So Pam, you've talked a lot about what your life looked like as a little girl. And I don't know if any of it is generational in regards to what your mother may have experienced. But what I hear you say is that there came a point to where you wanted to break it within your own family to begin forming a healthy relationship. Talk about that. What did that look like for you? And why was it so important?
Well, it's so important when you realize that you keep doing things and the results that you're getting are taking you further back and not moving you any further, any closer to the direction you want to go in. Of course, as a teenager, I did a lot of things that I regretted. But when I became an adult, I said, you know what? I got to do better. I got to step away. And a lot of times we have to step away. I stepped away from my home life. I ran away from home at 19 years old because I had had enough of living with my mother and the dysfunction and the abuse. I had just had enough. So I moved out. Now I moved with my boyfriend at the time because he had his own place. And ultimately we got married and had 2 children. But that was a situation that was only a running away. It was an escape. It wasn't something that I would have done. He asked me after a period of time, do you want to get married? And I'm like, well, actually, he didn't even ask me. We went to stay with his grandparents because my mother had shot at him, point blank shot at him. And fortunately, he ran, so he didn't get hit. He heard the bullet go past his ear. But at that point, we had to move to another state. And his grandparents said, we're going to give you guys a wedding. And I said, okay. So he never even asked me. I just, they said, okay, you got to be careful. Make sure that you're not agreeing to whatever that somebody else says simply because it's a good idea or it's what they want. You got to know it's what you want. That was not what I wanted, but I did it. But ultimately, my breakthrough came after that divorce and then went into another marriage. And then I was like, okay, I found this book. I found this book called Inner Bonding. And the book, it's by Margaret Paul. When I read that book, it got me in touch with my inner child. I had no idea that she was even still there, which is why I mentioned it earlier. I didn't even know she was there. And when I read that book, I just broke into tears because I realized that I need to heal her. If I don't heal her, I'm not going to be healed. And I just remember being miserable all the time. But then, I gave my life to Christ and not that life got easy, but I had more peace, I had more hope, and I had more joy. And I knew that whatever I was going through, that I wasn't going through it alone. And so through the different challenges I went through in life, I knew that I could always count on my Savior to get me through, no matter what stupid things I did. But I also picked up the practice of journal writing. So journaling, and I've become a journaling practitioner. I journal different styles of journaling to help, because people can start with one style because people say, well, I don't know where to start. And typically they start at cathartic, which is just spewing it out of your head. But after a while, you got to get past that. And there's definitely some other styles that are more advanced that can help you to work through the situation. So I started picking up and practicing every one of those styles. And it got me to the place of realizing where I was, where I'd come from, how the things I had done in my past, how they were, things that happened to me had caused me to do the things I did and caused the residual effects that I was doing. And that's when I had my wake up call, as I started to have these light bulb moments from just what I was writing. I was like, wow, okay. So I help a lot of people to go through that, to do that work. That's part of the work. The journaling, the different journaling styles, to do the work. You know, a lot of people go to therapists, and that's fine. But if you're going to go to a therapist, do the work. Work with your therapist, partner with your therapist. Don't expect your therapist to pull everything out of you. You got to give them something to work with. Lakeisha, I remember I went to my therapist, well, a therapist. I've gone about 5 different therapists, but one therapist I went to, and I saw her, and, you know, typically you see a therapist depending on your insurance for 6 weeks. Well, by this time, I walked in there and she said, okay, so what can I help you with? I had written down everything I wanted her to help me with. I said, by the end of the 6-week period, this is where I want to be. And she said, okay. So guess what? By the end of that 6 weeks, we got to where I wanted to be. Cheers. So you got to work with your therapist to get, but you also got to realize that I need to do something. This is serious. This is my life. This isn't, I'm not just drifting through life. I have a purpose. And if I have a purpose, I got to stop wasting time wallowing in this misery, being a victim for who I was, and manifesting that victimhood in my life. Start being about the business I'm supposed to be about. I was put here for a reason. And the experiences I experienced were so that I could be equipped to do what it is that I need to do. Because who wants to talk to somebody who hasn't been through what you've been through? Because then it's like, you don't know my story. Well, guess what, baby? Everybody's got a story. Everybody. But it's not until you overcome that you have a right to even tell your story.
You're exactly right, Pam. And, you know, you said something that touched me. I don't know if I shared with you, but by education, I have my master's in counseling. And so I've been in the role of a counselor for years, not doing that currently. But what you said was so pivotal. We as therapists, we can't fix you. So let's put that out there right now. We can be a supportive system with you, guide you, help you while you're beginning to fix yourself, right? Yeah. Because the reality of it is we can't be with you for the rest of your life, but we're going to give you the necessary tools. And some of those tools you have to be able to implement in your life, whether you're at home, whether you're in the grocery store, whether you're in the private moment of your car, right? And so you have to learn what works for you when these trials and tribulations show up. Because again, as we know, trauma, I'm going to use another analogy. Trauma to me is like a Polaroid picture, right? That you take this old Polaroid picture, the picture comes out, over a course of a time, the picture starts to crinkle, right? You're trying to figure out who are these people on this picture, because now I'm thinking of the old Polaroid. I'm sort of dating myself, Pam, right? I remember I was born in the 70s. I'm talking about the ones that got so old that there was cracks all through the picture, right? But here's the reality. No matter how distorted that picture may look because of the cracks, the same image is still there. The same reality is still there. So even through therapy, and you've done the work, you must realize that you have to be careful, because the trauma can resurface in your life at one point or another, right? So it's a matter of, we don't forget what our trauma is. We just have to find a way to no longer let our trauma dictate our life. I saw you set back a little bit, Pam. For those that are going to listen to this video, they didn't see you set back in that chair, right? Because there's the reality there, right? That we can't forget about our trauma, but we can't let our trauma continue to dictate our life and our purpose.
I was thinking, wow, that is powerful. You cannot let it dictate it. That's right. Don't let your past have control over you. You control that. You control the narrative of your life. And, you know, you have to be the adult. Because the past trauma is that little girl or little boy inside of you. You got to stand up and be that parent, that healthy parent that says, hold up. Because you set boundaries with your parents. Set boundaries with that little boy and that little girl inside of you, and let them know, we're gonna change this. We're going to change that narrative.
Yeah, not today. You don't have control today. That's what I hear you saying, Pam. You don't have control today.
Not today.
Yeah. You know, it takes me back to, and I often say this, you know, I have 3 children. And my daughter is the only girl I have. And it was a challenge for she and I for so many years. And I just couldn't see it, because I was in this vision of, I'm an authoritative figure. You're going to do as I say, when I say it, how I say it, and when I say it, right? I'm sure all of us have done that at some point at the time of our parenthood. But it wasn't until the more recent, when I authored my book, that I realized I did not give this little girl the love that she deserved, right? I loved her. I provided for her, but I used to always wonder why our relationship wasn't like what I was seeing of other mothers and daughters. And here's the reality. That little girl being me didn't know what a mother-daughter relationship looked like because I didn't have my mother growing up, right? I grew up in a very dysfunctional home up until my mother passed away when I was 8 years old. So my mother loved me, but because of her lifestyle, she couldn't provide for me the love that I really needed because her life was dysfunctional. She was an addict, so she couldn't make rational decisions, but she provided for me. Clue number one, I provided for my daughter, right? She did the best that she can do. And so when I became a parent, I did the best that I could do. But with that, I failed to give my daughter the love that she needed because I didn't know what a mother-daughter relationship looked like. And so when I did the work, and it wasn't easy, right? When I did the work, I apologized to her. And I told her I was sorry because I got it. And then when she understood my past, her words today was, I now give my mother grace because I understand.
That's good. Yeah. That's good. You know, that just reminds me of when I was with my second husband. I allowed my second husband to paddle my son. My son was 10 years old at the time, and he went to school, and he went to the nurse's office, and he showed them the bruise from the paddle. They took pictures. They called out, different states call it different things, but I call it DFACS, Department of Family and Children's Services. And they came to my house. They sat in my family room with my son in the room and told me, you will not put your hands on this little boy anymore. If you do, we will take him away from you. That was the most devastating conversation I'd ever had.
I'm sure.
The childhood services case came up unfounded. However, I was mandated to go to parenting classes for 6 weeks at night. And I will tell you, this is why we got to really consider the things that we go through, because that 6-week class was the best thing that ever happened to me, because I never knew how to parent. Because to your point, we do what we see and what we're taught. I'd never been taught how to parent. And after that, I mean, things just changed drastically because I now know what I'm doing to my kids. And I now know the value of what I do and how it impacts my children. And so, and to your point, I just want to say this. When we have children, and this may be harsh, but when we have children, we really have to put our own needs on the back burner. Yes. Because at this point, we gave birth to a child, and I have to learn this. My message is put yourself on the back burner. Whether you're a single parent and you want to date somebody, because you have needs, understanding those things got to wait. It's called delayed gratification on that, because your immediate gratification comes from raising that child and giving that child the love and the support that you never experienced. Yes. And learn how to be a parent. No, we don't have a book for it, but there are courses out there. There are places we can go to get the information that we need to learn how to do it the right way so that we're not damaging our children and creating that collateral damage in the future, creating generational upheaval that's going to linger on forever and ever and ever. My first book was I had a twin, How to Disrupt the Cycle of Childhood Trauma, because my twin sister took her life. And it's as a result of the childhood trauma that we both experienced. And I say disrupt the cycle because we may not be able to get rid of it. I can disrupt the cycle in other people's lives, but I can't do it in my daughter's life because it's already there. I can't do it in my son's life because it's already there. But if I can teach other people to step back long enough and make your child a priority as far as their needs, their desires, and what they need, and then guess what? Your future after they leave your home, taking the responsibility for what your responsibility was for that child, you will have so much more peace knowing that you've done the work that you're supposed to do and not focused on yourself and what you need as a victim. Because that's my second book, The Victimhood, triangulation, talking about how that manifests in our lives today. We can't allow that to happen. We got to make sure that we're doing it for them. If I could go back, I would make sure that I did things for my kids I set boundaries for myself so that I wasn't allowing myself to get that boy crazy or whatever. Come on, I'm in my third marriage. And so those first two, I didn't work through myself, my trauma, through it, but I'm working through it now. And it took a while, but I'm doing it. And I just don't want people to wait that long.
Yeah. So I'm going to say something, Pam. Okay. You just stepped on some people's toes. You just said some things that's very uncomfortable. So if you're listening or watching it right now, don't turn it off, right? Understand from the beginning, we said there are going to be some things that are going to be talked about that's a little bit uncomfortable. But in order to change, you must get into this uncomfortable space. You must listen to these uncomfortable conversations, because here's the reality. Your actions is making somebody else feel uncomfortable. Hear me out. If you can't listen to this conversation and you're about to turn this off, understand that your actions is affecting somebody else. So again, Miss Pam may have stepped on your toes. She may have hurt your feelings. You may think this woman don't know me. She doesn't. But we all have somebody that has a story that's similar to ours, and we can all learn from somebody else. And so, Miss Pam, I just want you to know somebody's pissed off right now, and it's quite okay, because they need to hear your message.
And they're going to be all right. They're going to be all right.
They're going to be all right, Ms. Pam. So as we talk about your message, I know that you do this on a daily basis. You help people transform their life and move forward in their life. So tell us, what do you do today with your message?
It's interesting, because my next message on my podcast, Let's Talk Boundaries, is there's so many people who need healing, but not many people are getting healing. So many people need it, but they're not getting it, because they're counting on somebody else. Like, listen to this podcast, they're counting on somebody else to do it for them. So what I do is I help people to not wallow in this mess. Let's move out of it. So as a boundaries coach, I start with setting boundaries. Here's why. Because every woman will tell you either, yeah, I set boundaries, or, you know what, I really need to set boundaries. Like, Lakeisha, let me tell you, everybody I talk to, every woman I meet, and I tell them what I do. I'm a boundaries coach, and I teach women how to set boundaries in all the areas of life that truly matter to them. They say, oh, girl, I need to talk to you, because I need to set boundaries. I say, here's my number. You think I get a call? Because they want to get to the point where they're setting boundaries, but they may not be setting the right ones. They're setting it based on their past traumas instead of healing from them. And then they look for somebody else to be the scapegoat for what they're going through. No, baby, no. You got to figure out, why is it that people are not honoring your boundaries? Oh, I set boundaries. Why are people not honoring them? There's something that you're saying, something you're doing. There's some pattern. I just said, look at the patterns. We really got to look at those patterns, because if you got patterns of not having people to honor your boundaries, you got to understand what that pattern is coming from, and really look at it, because it's not the other people. It's something that you're doing. That's that ownership, that accountability, if you want to move forward. So I help women to do that. I have a podcast, Let's Talk Boundaries, that helps women to do that. And I have published books. Like I said, my recent book is called Triangulation, where I go through the drama triangle and help people to understand how they're allowing relationships to put them in a position of the dysfunctional patterns that pulls them into the drama that is only a distraction from them doing the things they really need to be doing. And a lot of times our excuses are what we allow other people to put on us. And that's not right. That's where your boundaries come in. So I do that. I have a, upcoming masterclass I'm doing here in Atlanta on the 17th to help people to really work through my book and see how it impacts their lives, where they're going to be going through different scenarios in their lives, the people in their lives. And I'm going to show them how these people are impacting their lives in a negative way. I don't care how much they love you, how much you love them. Sometimes there's crabs in this bucket that want to keep you down, and you allow them to. It ain't nobody's fault but yours. If you allowing these people to keep you back, you got to step up, step out, and do what it is that you're supposed to do. So that's pretty much what I do, Keisha.
All right. So you were saying something, Pam, that I talk to people about as well, right? And this is not to, please hear me out, those that are listening. This is not to victimize a victim in any way, shape, or form, right? But I often tell people, when you leave one relationship, first of all, give yourself time. give yourself time before moving into another relationship. And again, like you said, Miss Pam, we all got needs, right? And everybody's needs is different for whatever the reason may be. But this is what I also share with men and women, specifically women. When you move into that next relationship, whether it's next week, next year, next month, right? Be very careful about what you tell that new person about what you went through. Now, this is how it ties into you, what you're saying, Miss Pam. Because some people say, well, I'm just letting them know what I'm not going to put up with. I'm just setting my boundaries. No, that ain't what you're doing. That's what you think you're doing. What you're actually doing is telling that person what you're willing to put up with. Because that person's listening very intently, and they're giving you that honeymoon face. Oh, I can't believe that person treated you that way. Girl, I would never treat you that way. Baby, I love you. That person is taking notes, right? It's just like that little cork board with that little stick pin. They're taking notes. They've already figured you out because you have told them what you're willing to put up with. So that's always my advice. Don't share your past relationships with somebody, especially if it's a newly ended relationship, because all you're doing is giving that person the green light when it's time for them to go, to push that gas. And now here you find yourself in the same situation that you've been in before. So that goes back to what you're saying, Pam. It may not be that person that's treating you that way. You had to take some ownership that maybe you opened up your mouth a little bit too much and you didn't do the work to make sure you didn't get back in that same relationship.
That was so powerful. Yeah,
I may have to come on down to Atlanta, Miss Pam. I may have to come on down to Atlanta on the 17th of May.
I'm telling you, and you just made somebody mad. You just stepped on somebody's toes. But you know what? Sometimes you just need to hear this. This is raw. This is one of those things you're like, hello, okay, that sounds like me. Yeah, I may not realize I do that, but you do. You can't be. And here's the other thing I wanted to add to that is when you're going for someone or someone's going for you, they already know what they want. You got to know what you want. That's one of the mistakes that I made was, I tell you, my second husband, when we started to date, he asked me on the phone, he said, so what are you looking for? What do you want? You know what I said? I said, you know what? I don't know. I'm still trying to figure it out. And when you tell them you don't know what you want, they're going to give you exactly what they want you to have. So you better know what it is that you want. My current husband, he wrote down 51 things that he was looking for in his wife. 51 things. I couldn't tell if all of them matched because we weren't married yet, if you know what I mean, because I learned. But of the 51 things, at least 48 of them, I matched. Because he didn't veer off from that. And so when I look at and so I tell you, if there's somebody you want, something you want, write down what you want. Because if something else comes along and doesn't match that, and you keep it stepping, keep going. Don't think you're going to change somebody because you ain't changed nobody. Don't think you're going to rescue someone. That's part of that drama triangle. You're not going to rescue. Because here's the thing about when you rescue, Lakeisha, when you rescue somebody, you're giving someone, you're saying that person that you're rescuing doesn't have the wherewithal, the sense or the ability to take care of it for themselves. So you're going to change them. You're going to do it for them. And then you end up being the mad one because you did the changing. You didn't tell them that's what you were going to do, but you thought you were going to come and rescue that person. That person didn't need you to rescue them.
Well, all right now. All right. And so often people do that. Right. So often we're busy trying to change somebody else because we feel sorry for them. Well, again, you can't change somebody who ain't wanting to be changed. And the only way a person can change is when they're ready to do the work for themselves.
When they're ready. And if you find somebody's not really ready to do the work, keep on stepping. Please don't let there's one I don't know, it was a comedian show or whatever. And this young lady used to say, but I love him. And like Tina Turner said, what's love got to do with it? When you allow, and that's what journaling does. It helps you with let your head and your head and your heart be in concert, talk to one another. Because even though you love him, what does that mean? Does that mean you're going to put up with this and put up with that because you love him and make excuses? No, get that head involved. Realize I need to keep moving. And is this the best example for me? Is it an example for my child if you have a child? You got to know that because everything you do in front of that child, this is where I'm going to do it again. That child is watching. And that child, just to your point, Lakeisha, about your daughter, that child is watching it. That child is taking notes, and that child's going to implement that in their lives because that's all they know. And then you're going to wonder why your child's miserable. And we don't want that. And it's because of something that we did. Take responsibility.
Sometimes I ask people this question when you talk about love. Do you really love the person, or are you in love with the illusion of wanting to be loved because of what you may have not gotten as a child? And many times, I tell people this also, Pam, don't answer that question for me. Do the work and answer it for yourself. Are you really in love, or are you in love with the illusion of wanting to be loved because of that child within you that was never given the love that you deserved?
That's what I did.
Yeah.
I did it twice.
And this is not just for women. This is for men as well, right? Because there's some damaged men out there just as much, if not more, than women from so many different levels. Maybe maybe their mother wasn't loving. And then let's put in the other part. Maybe their daddy wasn't there. So that's a whole different dynamic there. Or I'm about to step on somebody's toes, mama. Maybe their mama had too many men in and out the house. So now that boy don't know how to respect women because they didn't have respect for their mama.
And so guess what?
That's that drama triangle I think you're talking about there.
It is. Not only that, is that women that are healthy, even who've done the work, you have to be careful of the person you get with, because that person probably had trauma that they didn't deal with. And guess what? It's going to spill over all over you. All over you.
Yeah. So, Ms. Pam, as we talk about the drama triangle, not just your book, but just life as a whole, if someone was listening right now and they're trying to start doing the work, what are some things they should look for to be able to recognize, wait a minute, this is a toxic pattern?
How does it feel in your gut when this happens? We feel a certain way when something happens to us or someone says something to us that hurts our feelings. Let's say, for example, you're starting to date someone, and to your point, Lakeisha, when they already took notes on what you told them, then they start to do things and say things and treat you a certain way. And in your gut, that just doesn't feel right. You got to trust your gut. And then I say, whenever that happens, go journal, write it down, because over a period of time, you're going to go back into that reflective style of journaling, which is where you go back and look at what you've read. And as you go back and look over, you start to identify patterns of toxicity, patterns of people treating you a way that you don't deserve to be treated, or you don't like it. So let me tell you something. If it hurts, then it's not treating you right. And you need to identify those patterns. There was a guy that I dated in between my marriages. There was a guy that I dated, and he used to say things to me. I mean, he loved me, blah, blah, blah. So he said, I loved him. So I said, but he would, I would say something. He would snap back at me. I don't need you to tell me that, or you can't do that, or you're not that important or something. This is more priority to me than you. Like, he would say those things, then guess what he would do? He would apologize. So I was sitting there, like, when he apologized, I'd go, okay. But then because I wrote them all down, I noticed there was a pattern. So one day, I remember he did something to me. I was very upset. He called me and said, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I said that to you. Will you forgive me? And I said, no. I won't. He said, what do you mean? And I said, no, because this is a pattern. This is something you've done a lot. And you know what? I'm not putting up with it anymore. That right there is a boundary. I protected myself. The internal boundary was I did the work. I looked at the patterns, I identified the patterns and made a decision. That's your internal boundary. And my external boundary is something, your external boundary is something you either communicate or you act upon. And I did both. I said, no. I've identified these things. You do it too often, needlessly, and I'm not going to put it up with it anymore. So I set the boundary, I communicated, and then I acted upon it, and I didn't let them come back. You got to do the work. You got to look at the patterns. But you know what? If you don't write it down, you're not going to remember. You're going to think it's the first time it happened. Write it down, go back, reflect upon it, and make a decision. Because you don't have a problem. You got a decision to make.
Yeah. Good advice. Good advice. And, even when I was listening to you speak about that, I want to also share this. In those moments, sometimes we may feel alone, and sometimes we may feel lonely when we have to X ourselves out of a situation that just doesn't feel good. But know that being alone is okay, because we need those quiet moments to really do the work, right? So if you find that all your life you've been after relationship after relationship after relationship, and now there's a break, it doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with you. It just means that you're repairing what may have been wrong through the process of all those relationships. And so I hope that, as people are listening to you speak today, Ms. Pam, that they'll begin doing the work. If they have not done the work, that they'll begin doing the work.
And it's a journey. It's not something that's going to happen overnight. I'm currently married 18 years and I'm still doing the work. I got to work on this marriage. I got to work on me. And let me just say one more thing. Just because you're alone doesn't mean you have to be lonely. When you're alone, your best company is yourself. You just got to get to know who that person is.
Good advice. And so I was going to ask you to share one piece of advice, one heart-to-heart message with our audience before we conclude today's episode. And so what would be that heart-to-heart message that you would share with our audience today?
That you can't expect anybody to love you if you don't love yourself. And you may feel like you're not lovable. If you don't feel you're lovable, if you don't love you, then how you expect somebody else to love you and give you what you need? So go down and get in touch with that little person inside of you, be it a little girl, a little boy, and let them know you're there for them. Become a nurturer, become a friend, become a confidant to that person so that you can walk with your head up high and you can know that you can set the boundaries you need to set for you because you know exactly what that little girl, that little boy needs. And you're not going to veer away from that at all. Let me tell you something. That little girl and that little girl inside of me, she and I became one after 10 years of doing the work from me first reading that book, Inner Bonding by Margaret Hall. That was in 1999. In 2014, I realized that she and I had become one. So now, wherever I walk with rose petals right in front of me, and I walk through them because I don't let nobody think that they can walk over to me, cause drama in my life. I repel drama because I've done the work. So you know what I can do? I can celebrate who I am and whoever's around me because I have done the work. So get down in that little drawer, that file cabinet, bend down. I don't care if your knees hurt. I don't care if your back hurt. Get down there. And then when you get up, get somebody to help you up. Get a therapist to help you up. Get a counselor. Get a coach. Whatever you need that can help you, has been through what you've been through so that they can help you and be your guide. And they will not wallow in your misery with you like girlfriends usually do. Oh, some girlfriends are good, but there's a lot that want to take what you said and tell it to somebody else. You need a confidant that's been there, that's gone through it, and can help you to get through it too, to step out of it.
And there you have it. So once again, for our guest today, if this was your first time listening to Heart with Keisha B, all I ask is that you don't allow it to be your last. As you can see, Ms. Pam have come today and she have shared some messages and she's also stepped on your toes. But we hope that this message will resonate with you and that you will see the importance to know that no matter the grief, no matter the pain, that you can heal through whatever it is that you have been through. So again, if you're seeking someone who can help you to rediscover your purpose, reconnect with your heart, and rebuild with your life, while not just honoring the legacy of your child that you love so deeply, but throughout life as a whole, continue to follow Heart to Heart with Keisha B. You can find us on Facebook, YouTube, Amazon, Pandora, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. As always, thank you for your continued support. Thank you for tuning into Heart to Heart with Keisha B. Remember, grief may shape our journey, but it doesn't define who we are. Healing is not a straight path, but with every step forward, you're creating space for hope, strength, and new beginnings. If today's episode brought you comfort or clarity, share it with someone who might need it too. Let's continue building this community of compassion and resilience together. Until next time, take care of your heart, your mind, and your soul. Honor your journey and always know that brighter days are ahead. I am Keisha B, and this has been Heart to Heart.